JD Vance's political morning has turned into an unmitigated disaster, as a coordinated silent freeze from the global community leaves him isolated in a way no one predicted. This isn't a public condemnation, it's a chilling, unanimous act of exclusion that has left his campaign reeling. Here's what happened. Overnight, a cascade of cancellations hit his schedule. The planned high-profile call with the United Kingdom Foreign Secretary, cancelled without explanation. The private briefing with Japanese financial leaders, indefinitely postponed. The diplomatic reception at a key European embassy in Washington. His invitation was lost in the mail. This extends beyond diplomacy. Major global financial institutions have sent internal memos banning analysts from quoting him or citing his policy proposals in forecasts. International media partners of right-wing United States outlets are refusing to carry his interviews or speeches. The sudden and sweeping freeze that has gripped the international community is not the result of a slow buildup or a carefully orchestrated campaign. Instead, it is a direct, almost reflexive response to the most recent and controversial wave of policy proposals put forth by the administration. These proposals, unveiled with little warning and even less consultation, have sent shockwaves through the corridors of power, both at home and abroad. The world watched in disbelief as the details emerged. Policies that seem to disregard economic fundamentals, upend established trade agreements, and threaten the delicate balance that underpins global markets. The reaction was immediate and visceral, a collective intake of breath followed by a chilling silence that settled over boardrooms, government offices, and trading floors alike. In the days that followed, the atmosphere only grew more tense. Newsrooms scrambled to interpret the implications, while analysts struggled to find historical parallels for such a dramatic and abrupt shift. The financial district, usually alive with the hum of commerce and the pulse of global trade, became eerily quiet. The uncertainty was not just economic but existential, a sense that the rules of engagement had been rewritten overnight, leaving even the most seasoned experts at a loss for words. The world, it seemed, was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Behind closed doors, world leaders and CEOs have been frank in their assessments, though their words rarely make it to the public record. In private, they have described the administration's economic agenda as nothing short of reckless. Some have even gone so far as to call it, in hushed tones, economically unhinged. The phrase has become a kind of shorthand among the global elite, a way to express their deep unease without inviting diplomatic fallout. In confidential meetings, the mood is tense and uncertain. Executives exchange worried glances, aware that the stability of their companies and perhaps entire industries hangs in the balance. Heads of state, usually so measured in their language, have been caught off guard by the sheer unpredictability of the new policies. The sense of alarm is palpable, and it is spreading. The anxiety is not limited to the upper echelons of power. Mid-level officials, policy advisors, and even junior staffers have found themselves swept up in the uncertainty, their daily routines disrupted by the constant need to reassess and recalibrate. In the world of high finance, traders and analysts whisper about worst-case scenarios, while risk managers quietly update their models to account for a future that suddenly seems far less predictable. The phrase economically unhinged echoes through these circles as well, a signal that the old certainties can no longer be relied upon. The global order, once thought to be resilient, now appears vulnerable to the whims of a single administration. The term systemic risk now appears in redacted documents and confidential memos, a stark warning that the current trajectory could destabilize not just one nation, but the entire global financial system. Market volatility has become the new normal, with investors scrambling to make sense of the shifting landscape. Major summits, once bustling with activity and optimism, now feature empty seats and a sense of foreboding. The world's financial architecture, painstakingly constructed over decades, suddenly feels fragile, vulnerable to the whims of a single leader whose actions defy conventional logic. Analysts warn that the ripple effects could be catastrophic, triggering a cascade of failures that no one is prepared to contain. The stakes have never been higher, and the sense of urgency is mounting. In the background, central banks and regulatory agencies work overtime, holding emergency meetings and drafting contingency plans. The specter of a global recession looms large, as markets react to every new headline with wild swings. For many, the fear is not just about immediate losses, but about the long-term damage to trust and cooperation that underpins the global economy. The interconnectedness that once promised stability now threatens to amplify every shock, turning local disruptions into worldwide crises. The world's financial guardians, once confident in their ability to manage risk, now find themselves staring into the unknown. But, rather than confront him directly, the world's power brokers have chosen a different strategy. They are not engaging in open conflict or public denunciations. Instead, they are quietly erasing him from the global dialogue, refusing to acknowledge his presence or participate in forums where he might have a platform. Invitations to critical video calls go unanswered. International conferences proceed with empty podiums where his representatives would have stood. The symbolic act of muting a microphone during a virtual meeting has become a powerful gesture, a way to signal that his voice is no longer welcome in the conversation. This is not a battle of words or ideas. It is a calculated campaign of silence designed to isolate and contain the perceived threat without escalating tensions further. This approach, subtle yet resolute, is a testament to the power of collective action, even when that action is silence. By refusing to engage, the world's leaders hope to deny legitimacy and influence, effectively sidelining the administration without the spectacle of confrontation. The absence is conspicuous, a void that speaks louder than any condemnation. In diplomatic circles, this strategy is debated endlessly. Is it effective, or does it risk emboldening the very behavior it seeks to suppress? For now, the consensus is clear. Silence is the safest option, a way to buy time and prevent further destabilization while the world recalibrates. The isolation is almost total. In the halls of power, he is treated less like a political adversary and more like a contagion, something dangerous that must be contained through silence and non-recognition. Doors that were once open are now firmly closed, often quite literally with "do not enter" signs marking the boundaries of exclusion. Former allies turn away from handshakes, unwilling to be seen as complicit or even associated. The image of a hazmat suit in an empty office captures the mood perfectly, a sense of contamination, of something toxic that must be kept at bay. This strategy of erasure is unprecedented in modern diplomacy, a collective effort to quarantine not just a person, but an entire set of ideas deemed too dangerous to entertain. The world has chosen to respond not with confrontation, but with a chilling, calculated silence, hoping that, in time, the threat will simply fade away. Yet beneath the surface, questions linger. How long can this strategy hold? What happens if the administration refuses to be sidelined, or if the economic fallout proves too great to ignore? For now, the world waits, united in its silence but divided in its hopes and fears. The future remains uncertain, shaped as much by what is left unsaid as by the actions taken in the open. In this new era of economic brinkmanship, silence has become both a weapon and a shield, a fragile barrier against chaos, and a reminder of just how quickly the foundations of order can be shaken. The message coming from the world's most influential capitals is nothing short of devastating. In a matter of hours, the story has swept across every major news outlet, with headlines blaring urgent warnings and somber analyses. The tone is unmistakable. This is not just another political controversy, not just another diplomatic spat. This is a seismic shift in how the international community views one of the most prominent figures on the global stage. The world is watching, and the verdict is harsh. The sense of urgency is palpable, as if the very fabric of international relations is being tested in real time. Newsrooms are abuzz, analysts scramble to interpret the implications, and the public is left to grapple with the enormity of what's unfolding. The gravity of the situation is underscored by the sheer speed with which consensus has formed. Rarely do so many nations, with such diverse interests, speak with one voice. Yet here, the condemnation is swift, coordinated, and absolute. In closed-door meetings and public statements alike, world leaders are making it clear they will not legitimize, recognize, or even engage with a political faction that they see as a direct and existential threat to the post-war order that has for decades underpinned global stability. The international system, built painstakingly after the devastation of the Second World War, is not something they are willing to gamble with. The stakes, they argue, are simply too high. The message is being delivered in no uncertain terms. Any group or individual perceived as undermining the foundations of this order will find themselves isolated, cut off, and rendered irrelevant on the world stage. Behind the scenes, diplomats are working overtime, drafting communiques and coordinating responses, determined to present a united front. The language may be measured, but the intent is unmistakable. There is no room for ambiguity, no space for negotiation. The world's most powerful alliances are drawing a line in the sand, signaling that the rules of engagement have changed. For those who cross that line, the consequences will be swift and unforgiving. For Vance, the consequences are immediate and severe. Even before he has a chance to secure his party's nomination, he is being systematically erased from the global conversation. His image, once a fixture at international summits and diplomatic gatherings, is now conspicuously absent. Invitations to key forums have been quietly rescinded. His name is missing from the guest lists of high-level meetings. In the corridors of power, his reputation is being dismantled piece by piece, as if he never existed at all. The world's financial centers, always attuned to shifts in political winds, are already factoring in the risk of his potential leadership, with markets reacting nervously to the prospect of instability. Investors are pulling back, multinational corporations are reassessing their strategies, and economic forecasts are being hastily rewritten. The ripple effects extend far beyond politics, touching every sector that relies on predictability and trust. For Vance, the isolation is not just diplomatic, it's economic, social, and deeply personal. The machinery of international engagement, once open to him, is now grinding to a halt, leaving him stranded on the outside looking in. The effect is chilling. Vance is being made into a global non-person, a figure so toxic, so radioactive, that even the hint of association is enough to trigger diplomatic fallout. Allies are distancing themselves quietly but unmistakably. Longtime partners are reevaluating their ties, worried about the repercussions of being seen as too close. International organizations are issuing statements that, while couched in diplomatic language, leave no doubt about their stance. The message is clear: credibility on the world stage is not just about power or popularity, it's about trust, legitimacy, and the willingness of others to engage. And right now, Vance is losing all three. The world is moving on, and he is being left behind, his credibility as a potential leader in tatters before the race has even truly begun. The silence that surrounds him is deafening, a void where influence and opportunity once existed. In the end, the lesson is stark. In the interconnected world of today, no leader can afford to stand alone. The cost of isolation is total, and for Vance, the price is being paid in real time, as the world turns its back and moves forward without him. In the intricate chessboard of global politics, we are witnessing a new and extraordinary tactic, one that has never been deployed at this scale or with such precision. This is an unprecedented form of modern political containment, a strategy that doesn't rely on sanctions, military might, or even public condemnation. Instead, it operates in the shadows, leveraging the power of collective silence and social exclusion. Imagine a world leader, once at the center of every negotiation, now finding themselves alone at the table, their voice echoing in an empty conference room. The world's most influential figures, who once sought their counsel, now turn away, refusing even the most basic acknowledgement. This is not just diplomatic cold shouldering, it is a calculated, coordinated effort to render someone invisible on the world stage. The message is clear: you are no longer part of the conversation. Your influence, your opinions, your very presence, are being systematically erased from the narrative. This is political containment, not by force, but by omission. And in today's hyper-connected world, where information flows faster than ever, this kind of isolation can be more devastating than any embargo or blockade. But let's take a step back and consider the psychological impact of such a maneuver. For centuries, power in international relations has been measured by who gets a seat at the table, who is invited to the summit, who is quoted in the press. To be excluded is not just a diplomatic slight, it is a signal to allies and adversaries alike that your relevance is in question. The ripple effects are immediate. Allies begin to distance themselves, investors grow wary, and even domestic supporters start to question their loyalty. The target of this containment finds themselves not only isolated from the world, but also from their own base of support. This is a tactic that weaponizes perception, turning the absence of attention into a tool of destabilization. It's a silent, psychological siege, and it's as effective as any show of military force. What's more, this strategy is not limited to individuals. Entire nations, movements, or ideologies can be subjected to this form of erasure. When the world's media, political institutions, and financial networks collectively decide to look the other way, the consequences can be profound and far-reaching. The target is left to navigate a landscape where every door is closed, every channel is blocked, and every opportunity for dialogue is denied. In this environment, even the most powerful can find themselves powerless, struggling to break through the wall of silence that has been so carefully constructed around them. But here's the paradox. In an age where news travels at the speed of light, silence can be deafening. The absence of coverage, the lack of discussion, becomes its own form of statement. That's why it's more important than ever to break through the noise, or, in this case, the silence. Share this video on every political and financial newsfeed you follow. Post it to your social media, send it to your friends, and make sure it reaches the feeds of those who shape opinions and make decisions. The more people who see this, the harder it becomes for the story to be buried. In a world where algorithms decide what we see and hear, your action, your share, can disrupt the carefully constructed wall of silence. It's not just about spreading information, it's about challenging the very mechanisms that are being used to contain and control the narrative. Every share is a crack in the facade, a reminder that the world is watching, even when the official channels refuse to acknowledge it. Think about the power you hold in your hands. With a single click, you can amplify a message that others are trying desperately to suppress. In the past, information was controlled by a handful of gatekeepers, editors, broadcasters, government officials. Today, each of us has the ability to bypass those filters and reach audiences directly. This is both a privilege and a responsibility. When you share content that challenges the status quo, you are participating in a new kind of activism, one that is decentralized, immediate, and impossible to fully contain. The more we engage, the more we force the conversation back into the open, where it belongs. So don't underestimate the impact of your actions. In a world where silence is weaponized, your voice, your willingness to share, to comment, to question, becomes a form of resistance. The strategy at play here is both simple and insidious. Defeat him with silence. No headlines, no interviews, no debates, just a void where there used to be constant coverage. Newsrooms that once buzzed with activity now sit in eerie quiet, their screens blank, their journalists idle. The doors to press briefings remain closed, and the usual flood of analysis and commentary has slowed to a trickle. This is not an accident, it is a deliberate choice. By refusing to engage, by withholding the oxygen of publicity, the architects of this strategy hope to suffocate their target's relevance. It's a form of information warfare, one that relies on the complicity of both the media and the public. If no one is talking about you, do you even exist in the political arena? That's the question at the heart of this containment policy. And it's a question that should concern us all, because today's target could be tomorrow's whistleblower, reformer, or even an entire movement. Consider the implications for democracy and free speech. When silence is used as a tool to erase dissenting voices, it undermines the very foundations of open society. The media, which should serve as a watchdog and a platform for diverse perspectives, becomes a participant in the act of exclusion. The public, conditioned to accept the absence of coverage as a sign of irrelevance, may never realize what they're missing. This is how narratives are shaped, not by what is said, but by what is left unsaid. The danger is not just in the silencing of one individual, but in the creation of a precedent. If it can happen to one, it can happen to anyone. The chilling effect spreads, and soon, self-censorship becomes the norm. We must remain vigilant, questioning not only the stories we are told, but also the stories that are conspicuously absent. To truly understand the impact of being ghosted by the world, you need insights that mainstream outlets simply won't air. Imagine sitting alone in a dark room searching for updates, only to find static on every channel. The press briefing rooms are empty, the news tickers are silent, and the usual flood of information has dried up. What does it mean for a leader, a nation, or even an idea to be systematically ignored? How does this affect global alliances, economic stability, and the very fabric of international relations? These are the questions that go unanswered when silence becomes the weapon of choice. But here, we dig deeper. We analyze the subtle shifts, the hidden signals, and the stories that slip through the cracks. We bring you the context, the background, and the implications that others are too cautious or too complicit to discuss. Because understanding the true cost of political containment requires more than just headlines. It demands a willingness to look beyond the surface and question the motives behind the silence. Let's not forget the human element in all of this. Behind every act of political containment, there are real people, advisors, diplomats, citizens, who feel the effects in their daily lives. The uncertainty, the anxiety, the sense of abandonment can be overwhelming. For those on the inside, the silence is not just a lack of information, it's a constant reminder of their isolation. For those on the outside, it's a puzzle with missing pieces, a story that doesn't quite add up. That's why independent analysis and investigative journalism are more important than ever. We strive to connect the dots, to provide the missing context, and to give voice to those who have been rendered voiceless. In doing so, we hope to foster a more informed, more engaged, and ultimately, more resilient global community. So, if you want to stay informed, if you want the full story, not just the sanitized version, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell. By joining this community, you ensure that you won't miss the updates, the analysis, and the exclusive insights that you won't find anywhere else. Your engagement is more than just a click, it's a statement that you refuse to be kept in the dark. Together, we can shine a light on the stories that matter, challenge the narratives that are being imposed, and hold those in power accountable, even when they would rather operate in silence. Stay with us as we continue to uncover the realities of modern political containment, and remember, in a world where silence is used as a weapon, your voice and your curiosity are more powerful than ever. As we move forward, let's commit to asking the difficult questions and seeking out the stories that others would prefer to keep hidden. Let's use our collective curiosity to break down barriers and demand transparency from those who wield influence behind closed doors. The more we learn, the more we can challenge the status quo and advocate for a world where no one is erased by silence. Your participation is crucial, not just for this channel, but for the health of our global discourse. So stay engaged, stay critical, and above all, stay curious. The future of open dialogue depends on it.